Jewish, so I'm going to need both of my hands to talk. Nothing much more humbling than following an act like that. Thank you, that was beautiful. So my name's David Ansel. I'm the soup peddler. A lot of people don't know this, but I'm very famous. Humility is one of, it's hard to choose, but it is one of my greatest attributes. And those are all the jokes I have for today. A modest or low view of one's own importance. I had to look it up. I didn't have to look it up. I think we all have a sense of what humility is. I'm honored, I think, to be chosen for this particular theme. There's no business in Austin that has much more of a humble beginnings. Although I did find one, and I was upset to find out that there's one business that has smaller initial capitalization than mine. I'll get to that later. The story, it's a really long story. My people come from the Ukraine, the old country, and this is part of the Jewish diaspora. So it goes even further back than that. But they came to this country, and like many others, we're actual, and I have documented proof, we're actually literal peddlers in Baltimore. So this was there's a lot of full circle-ness to my story, and that's just one of them. But I was a good little boy. I grew up, did well in school, and I went to school for electrical engineering, although I never even really chose that. In fact, I never filled out my own college application. My mom did that for me. And it was because my sister went to electrical engineering, and we were good at math, so they said, you should do that too, and you shouldn't become an architect like you want to, like you really should have, because they don't get paid that much. So everything, ultimately has its own, it's a good thing. I wouldn't change anything along my path, but I did graduate with double E with a 2.997 GPA. And yeah, that was good. I feel like I should have been weeded out, but I wasn't. And boy, is that some strong coffee? Is anyone feeling that? Yeah, okay. I moved to Austin, and I kind of fell into this Austin thing. My story can go on and on. I hope you have time. But I fell into this Austin thing. I moved into this very magical, special house and community on Mary Street in South Austin. And the house had a clock tower and had all these oak trees and wildflowers and had a view overlooking the city. And the house was also kind of a nexus for community. And so I started I just fell right into it when I moved to Austin and tapped into this creative community and found a lot of people that were kind of creatively writing the scripts to their lives. And I found that being a software guy in Austin was not really quite as charming as the lives that some of these other people were living. And so there's a lot of different parts of the story, but I left. I went to Africa to find myself. I was there for about 6 months. And I'm not sure if I found myself, but I did find that I had an awful lot of security in my life. So I came back from that trip with a lot of good experiences, but also with a really good sense that I could take a risk, a big risk in my life, and failure wouldn't be that big of a problem because of all that security. So when I came back, I ran out of money and I had to get another computer job. So I got another computer job, and then I found out I was sort of in this cage with golden bars, and ultimately one day decided to, I was driving to work and I saw this couple very carefree on their bicycles, and they were in my memory, it was almost slow motion. I could see them with their hair sort of flowing behind them and laughing and winking at each other as they were biking. And living that lifestyle, that South Austin lifestyle that I had for a while, where you wake up at 9 or 10 and meet someone for breakfast tacos and maybe play a game of chess and then go to the Springs. And then, does anyone still do that? I guess people still do that. Or is it, and so I saw this couple on the way to work, and I decided, or it just lodged in my mind, and then got on Mopac and went up to the client's office, and I was stuck in this building and the cubicle world, and there were birds dancing on the branches. It was springtime, and we were on a second story, and there were birds outside, and it seems a little trite, but I really I felt caged, and they seemed so free, and so I decided to stand up and walk down the hall, and then I uttered the 6 words that changed my life, and I went to my project manager and said, "I think I quit." Or no, 7. Yeah, I quit. And I did, and I walked out of that building, and I didn't quite become the soup peddler right away. I became a yoga teacher for a while, and I was a freelance writer, and I did some roofing and some faux finishing, and I did a lot of other things. And then I went to massage school, and my parents at that point were just, and then a friend told me, I'm getting way off topic. My friend told me to not do that because I would probably end up as a 40-year-old guy wearing a robe, and just rubbing on women, and it just would not be, it's just not a good path. So I decided against that. And then there is a much more righteous track to this story, and that is that I had a lot of travel experiences during my life in that sort of 20s era. And during that time, I picked up a lot of interesting experiences about experiencing food culture, street food culture, particularly around the world. And I was really blessed to have had the travel opportunities. So I've been inspired culinarily, and another strand came in where I accidentally kind of started a Jewish community, not my last, but my first Jewish community in South Austin, and it was a Shabbat group, which is the Jewish Sabbath. Friday night dinner was the main part of that for this group, and it was a potluck dinner, and for young people, potluck Friday night often meant they would bring a bottle of wine or pick up some brownies or cookies, and so we had wine and cookies, and so I had to sort of fill in the gaps, and I started learning to cook and scale my cooking a little bit. And I also became like the de facto rabbi of our little group, which is pathetic. And but I gained a real respect and for the function of food in community as a focal point, and that probably lodged in my head on this side, and the travel experiences kind of lodged in my head on this side, and my creative writing was here, and my love for bicycles and lifestyle was here. My graphic design sensibilities were here, and they all, one night, swirled around in the proper mix and came out with an idea. And the idea was to start a business and make food and take it to people. Because at the time, there were no farmers markets, there were no food trailers, there were no stepping stone paths to get into the food business. This was early 21st century, we're talking. And there was, like I said, there was no, you were either like a grizzled veteran restaurateur, or there was nothing, there's no way. So I just thought, well, I'll just make food and sell it to people and take it to them. This was at a time when people were excited to get an email. It was like they would go in the morning to like the mailbox and check. This was a you got mail era. And they'd be like, look, Ma, I got an email. It was a big deal. And so I'd done a lot of email kind of marketing with my yoga classes and my Jewish group. So this was like another one. Just I sent out an email to my friends. Backing up, I had to figure out what I was going to make. And I figured, well, I'd lived in group houses my entire life. I have never lived alone in my life. So in group houses, there's a kind of something that happens where all the vegetables kind of start up here and then they slowly move down and then towards the back of the refrigerator. And then at a certain point, they're perfect age for soup making. So I always made soup along the way. And soup's one of those things that like it just gets better the next day. So I figured this is something I could make one day and then deliver it the next day and it'll be better. And also along the way, I'd found these buckets that I wanted to use. So I don't know if anyone remembers the buckets. Do you still have yours?
No, okay. I think I may have one.
Okay. So this kind of was an accidental part of a big part of the charm of the business was that I used these reusable buckets when I first started. Ultimately, the health department didn't really like that, but there was a lot they didn't like along the way. But I needed something form-fitting for this bucket, and I thought soup is a very form-fitting food. It really will take the shape of whatever vessel it's in. It's wonderful that way. And so I got the soup buckets, and then I had to figure out, you know what, I sent the email and I said, here's the deal. Give me some money for the bucket. It's going to be $10 for a bucket of soup, and you leave your empty bucket out each week, and I'll replace it. And the soup will come on Sunday, and I'll bring it to you on my bicycle. And I didn't know what I had started then. It was just one email, and it was 17 people, friends, and then friends of friends. Like I said, email, like there was nothing happening in the world. Like it was quiet. And like these people got an email and they passed it to their friends. So 17 people the first week said, okay, you sound desperate enough. You can bring me some soup on Sunday. And so I did some math and I calculated the buckets were 2 quarts and 17, it's 34 quarts. Okay, I'll go to the restaurant store and I'll get a pot. So I walked into the restaurant store and I walked in, and this is like when old restaurant managers are put out to pasture. This is where they work, is at the restaurant supply store. Because they need, they want day jobs, they have families, they want like a regular lifestyle, regular existence. So they, did not believe what they were seeing when I literally biked into the store with that bike, which I almost brought today. And I said, take me to your pots. I need your biggest pot. So I got this one pot. It was a 60-quart pot. I thought, I'll allow for growth. And so I bought a pot, and I bought a paddle, stirring paddle, and I bought a ladle, a big ladle, 32-ounce ladle. I thought, well, the biggest ladle possible would be the best for this. And so I went home and I made, the first soup was veggie gumbo. And it started out as a vegetarian soup business for several years. And so veggie gumbo, I figured, well, I made a little test batch, and I still have that on my wall at work, the first little scribbled recipe. And so I decided, well, I'll just multiply it out times 17, and I'll make that much, and I'll be good. So I don't know if you've ever made soup. Who here is a soup maker? Lovely. You normally turn on the pot, chop an onion, put it in, chop a carrot too, put it in, celery. So that's what I did, except that, I was starting with 17 onions. So and I was not very fast onion prepper, so the first onion goes in, and then next. By that 17th onion, the first onions have been in there for like 25 minutes. And then you've got raw onions going in. And then, Trinity, you have, onions, celery, and bell peppers for a gumbo. And so by that time, I've got like an hour in the pot. Some things are like raw, some things have been stewing in there for an hour. And then have you ever tried to cut 15 pounds of okra? Which is just gooey mess, and it was horrible. Luckily, soup is a very tolerant medium. And one of the accidental points of genius about the business is that it is quite tolerant. And so the soup was made, and it was good. It was fine. And it was made with lots of love. So what do you do? Well, so then the soup was ready, so I figured it's time to take it off the pot. And you don't know that a 60-quart pot is too heavy for a person to lift off. This is the learning curve that I was on. This is how much planning went into this very humble business. By the way, I started with $90. That's the initial capitalization. And the story that beats mine is Tiff's Treats, which started with $30. Very impressive. So I got a friend, problem solving, to help me lift the thing. Well, what do you do with all this? You can't just stick a 60-quart pot in the fridge of like lava. So it was cold outside. It was February 10th. It was February 9th, 2002. So I put the soup outside. And one of the cost-cutting measures early on was that I didn't want to spring for the lid for the pot. So I got a piece of plywood out of the garage and covered it. I didn't want any critters getting in, so I put some bricks on top of that. This is very true. The deep, dark secrets of the soup peddler. And it was cold, and the soup got cold, and it was wonderful. I put it in buckets, and then I had to take it to the customers. So first, you're looking at, that's actually bike 2.0 that's in that picture. The first bike was just my yellow bike that I built at the Yellow Bike Project, and kind of a Franken bike that had just a milk crate on the back, which could hold 4 buckets of soup. Well, luckily, my house on Mary Street is at the top of the neighborhood, essentially, so I could go downhill fully loaded and come back empty. So I did many runs from the house, and scalability was not something I was concerned with at this time. One of the concerns was that the lids were not very tight-fitting. So as I went down the Caliche alleyway for the first bike run, one of the things popped off. Soup went all over my, dripped through the thing and all over my bike tire and everything. And so rubber bands. Got rubber bands, keep the soup tight. I can go on, but I went back to the restaurant supply store and told them about this, and they started becoming very, very concerned for the public's health. And so one of the guys who worked there taught a food safety course that all the restaurant people are supposed to take, and he got me into that food safety class a couple months later, and he eventually became my general manager for 10 years. Where do I go with this story? So it was a big deal. I mean, it really touched people. And because there was this youthful innocence to it, there was sort of a throwback nature to it where it was kind of like the milkman, because you put your bucket out and the soup would show up. And so it just charmed the pants off people, and it was really, really great. The media, there were 2 food writers in Austin at the time, and I think they just sat at their desks like this, waiting for something to happen. Writing about the new Stouffer's entree that was available at H-E-B. That was like the food scene here, and so when I came, and when I happened, it sort of like hung the moon. So in the Statesman, my first Statesman article was like full, the whole entire food section, front and back pages. And so, and it was very charming. And a friend of mine did a documentary, a short form documentary about me at the time, and then that got into a bunch of film festivals, and I wrote a book, and that was a big, that was a nice little success. That book right here it is. The Soup Peddler's Slow and Difficult Soups. That's all right. Right. And then Food and Wine Magazine, Food Network, all these big things. So like, that was sort of the apex of my fame. That's why I kind of start with that joke. A lot of people don't know this, but I'm really famous. It was in 2004, 2005. Before some of you were born, I believe. So, God, there's a lot to say. You know, soup is, not only is the story humble, but soup itself is a very, very humble thing. It's something that all cultures have in common. It's something that's kind of part of the primordial experience of man. Someone will have to look up primordial and see if that was used correctly. But primeval something. They found soup bowls of fish soup in Japan or China, like 10,000 years old. And, you know, soup was, you know, when the man could only make vessels like this and didn't know how to make plates, and it was before the fork. It predates the fork. You know, back then, someone would ask directions, you'd tell them to turn left at the fork in the road. They'd have no idea what the hell you're talking about. This is a long time ago. And it's something that really touches people in that way, because soup's an expression of love. And you know, you make, my wife wants to get a shirt for me that says, "I crack myself up." Let me laugh that one off. Soup is like a really deep part of our experience as human beings, and it's a very humble food. It's kind of alchemy, where you take, you know, a very like lesser ingredients and turn them into something greater. It's, in some sense, you know, a lot of times the stock pot is like the trash can of the restaurant, where all the trimmings and things go into the soup, into the stock, and then you wrest this really valuable product out of it. When I was in Italy, which is one of the great soup centers of the world, I got to go and travel and sample different soups. And there's something in Italian cuisine called cucina povera, which is, you know, the food of the poor kitchen. And there's a saying that we were better off when we were worse off. That is, when we ate kind of closer to the ground and like the lesser ingredients, you know, our lives are fuller, our lives are easier. You know, as our lives get more rich, there are more demands on us, and you know, we're better off when we're worse off. And I think that kind of feeling of like a simple life is one of the things that resonated throughout the Soup Peddler story and the Soup Peddler business. It was like that throwback sense. There was a simpler time, and so, you know, that essentially is like, that's the kernel of the Soup Peddler story. How are we doing on time? 2 minutes, goodness gracious. I'm only halfway through. Well, we're not gonna be able to get to the ugly part of the story, I'm sorry. God, 2 minutes. Well, humility, do you want to hear about humility, I guess? Or just more fun stuff? Well, I had all this stuff to say that, like, so yes, it gets ugly. There was like, then after that, it's sort of business, and there's all these business concerns, and growing the business, pulling yourself out of the business to work on the business, and bringing people in to work in the business, and growing the business in order to provide for the people that are in the business, assuming more risk in order to do that, leveraging yourself, and then having to become a leader of those people. And so leadership, I often struggled with leadership and humility. Like, you have to have confidence to be a leader, but is confidence, is that mutually exclusive from humility? You can't have a lack of confidence and be a leader. So it's something I've kind of struggled with, because I do like to be a humble part of the team, a modest or low view of one's own importance. An entrepreneurial venture is a creative process, and there's a lot of people that need to be part of that. So I feel like being part of a creative team, I know this sounds trite, but requires humility, because it invites ideas, and it invites like a nice warm feeling of co-creation, and then in our business it kind of conveys a culture of hospitality, and then in your team I think it creates a sense of authentic loyalty to the ideas, and not to the people that are, not to the boss man. So just kind of stumbling to a close here. That's the Soup Peddler story in a very short nutshell. Thank you for your attention. Good. All right, cool.
I feel like I stopped the train. I stopped the train. We're not really yet.